Hi, everyone. Welcome to a community conversation on reentry. This community conversation is part of a series of events for the second annual Vigil for Freedom and Racial Justice. The purpose of the vigil is to highlight and address mass incarceration and state prison safety during COVID-19 and provide a public, high-profile platform to uplift the needs, voices, and calls for help of mostly Black North Carolinians in prison. Our coalition intends to remain standing in collective vigil each day from December 1st, from sunrise to sunset until January 1st, 2022. To learn more about the vigil and sign on to our letter, you can visit the website www.decarceratenownc.com. And you can also stay tuned for a series of discussions on the impacts of the carceral system on the lives of North Carolinians. I'll now hand it over to my colleague, Drew Dahl.
Hi, folks. I'm Drew Dahl. I'm with the Religious Coalition for Nonviolent Durham, and I do reentry. We have Daquan Peters and Demetrius Lynn, who are also with us here. And so we're talking about housing and employment today. Yeah, I mean, when we think about reentry, the two critical issues are where are people going to live and where are they going to work to support themselves. And they really go hand in hand, because without the employment, you're not going to be able to afford to stay anywhere. And if you, it's critical. So we want to have some time today to share some of our stories, to hear your stories, and then to talk about what challenges we're being faced and how we would address those. So Daquan, if you'd like to be up first, why don't you share some of your experience with housing and employment in reentry?
Thank you, Drew. How's everyone today? My name is Daquan Peters. I work for Forward Justice. I'm an organizer for Forward Justice and the New Hanover County Second Chance Alliance coordinator. I work with a local reentry company called Link Incorporated, which stands for Leading in the New Communities. It's a reentry organization here that provide transitional housing, and they have a local reentry council as well. My experience as someone who work in the reentry field, as well as a formerly incarcerated individual who's been home for 27 months after doing 12 and a half years, reentry is pretty much obsolete when you really think about it, because as you just said, you can't have reentry and not have housing and employment in it. And my thing is, you automatically setting someone up for failure when they come home and they can't find employment and they can't find housing. That's automatically setting someone up for failure. These things, and you have landlords and these agencies that legally discriminate against people because they have a criminal history background. I myself couldn't find housing, and I'm an advocate for housing. I couldn't find housing. I had a job. I'm working. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. I'm a law-abiding citizen, and because I have a criminal background, I couldn't find housing. I've lost hundreds of dollars on filling out the applications and knowing the individuals that I'm filling these applications out for already know that they're going to deny me because of my criminal background. Yet you take my money. These are the things that we advocate for, and it's hard for a person who hasn't fully developed from a criminal mindset to come home with the intent on doing the right thing. His or her whole passion come home to do the right thing, and he or she is hit in the face with the fact that they can't find housing or jobs. So what that's going to do is going to lead a person who still has, that fully hasn't developed mentally to come back out here and deal with society. It's going to be hard for them. And then you have employment. When it comes to employment, it's hard to find a job that's going to be able to sustain you and your family. People understand that they would say that, yeah, we for second chances and we hire, but the wages that they pay you, you can't afford to live off of it. The average, I know here in Wilmington, the average rent for a 1-bedroom apartment and this is not in a good community, is $800-900, $700. Now, if you want to get a 2-bedroom, now you're talking about $1,000 or better. You can't live off of $9-10 an hour and take care of all of your bills and yourself and your children and your family. It's just not going to happen. So these are the struggles and the barriers that people with criminal convictions face. And you have people that are coming home from prison, men and women, that are skillful in every area to be able to be productive out here in the society, but people are not giving them the opportunity and the chances for them to prove themselves because they're looking at a piece of paper and trying to define an individual. That's still dehumanizing in the same aspect as the judge and the prisons and all of those things do to individuals that they come across. So, it's just a perpetual state of dehumanizing us. Are not seeing us as human beings, are not seeing us as who we are, as if we are incurable, like we can't change, we're incapable of change. And all that we saying is, if I come home and I prove myself and I'm showing and proving, allow me the opportunity to continue to be able to be productive out here in the society, allow me the opportunity to be able to build generation and wealth for my family the same way as you are. But the system is not built and constructed for it to be that way. It's built and constructed for it to be a repetitive, a cycle that they keep warehousing us and sending us back in and back out, back in and back out, so they can continue to say reentry without putting the word successful in front of reentry.
Yeah.
So we can have a conversation about reentry all day long, but if we're not talking about a successful reentry, and a successful reentry include housing, education, health, mental and physical, employment, social services, all of these things, it applies to a person, should apply to us just as well as it apply to the average citizen that's out here that hasn't offended.
All right, Daquan, thanks, man. Demetrius, you want to jump in?
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me too, Drew. I definitely want to piggyback off everything that Daquan said, man. I mean, it goes full cycle. It goes hand in hand. My name is Demetrius Lynn, and I'm the program coordinator here in Durham County for the local reentry council. And I've been involved with this reentry work in our community in Durham County for over the last 15 years. So everything that Daquan is saying is I definitely agree with. Obstacles and hurdles alone in themselves are just having an individual come home. And, we definitely want to help individuals do successful reentry, but it's hard to ask a man or a woman to come home from incarceration to find employment, and they don't know what they're going to lay their head at the night before. So we go back to housing needs, housing opportunities. Not only have you having strikes against you, but they say that are forgiven or it goes away. It never goes away. It's a stigma. It's attached to you for the rest of your life. I don't care how much good you do, what type of work you're doing. Society never forgives us for the things we've done in the past. We go back to housing situations. Here we are, maybe committed a crime at the early age of 24 years old, but after being incarcerated for 20 years and you're 40 years old, 44, you're trying to find an apartment. In the apartment, people tell you that you have a criminal conviction from 20 years ago. They're not going to allow you to rent. They're like, what are you telling that individual? You're also telling this man, I don't believe you're going to succeed. Not only do I not believe you're going to succeed, I'm not going to help you succeed. I want you to go back because I'm going to keep shutting doors in your face. And, we have people who deal with PTSD or these stigmas where if you have support, somebody can put their hand on your back and help you try to move forward. But what about individuals who don't have support? When somebody tell you no, and then the next person tell you no, it's easy for you to just give up, give in, and go fall back into the system. That's not what we're trying to do. So the biggest thing in our area right now is housing need. You know, we definitely are a big component of trying to help individuals. What we say, what they called it, affordable housing. Well, what is affordable? Affordable to whose calculator, affordable to whose schedule. You know, affordable now, they list affordable housing is $1,400-$1,500 a month for one bedroom. They consider it affordable housing. Affordable to who? Like, who is that based upon? These are just things that we need to try to get behind more. Legislative, Congress, whoever. It needs to be a better way to provide adequate housing. Me, myself, I deal with having a criminal history myself. At the time, I had custody of 2 females. Now, despite not only am I was a convicted felon at the time, but I'm confined to a wheelchair. I'm paralyzed from a gunshot incident from 20-something years ago. So here I go to court and awarded custody of my kids, despite my criminal history. But then when I tried to apply for housing for my kids, I was told that we can't provide you housing, but we can give your kids housing. Now, if I'm their guardian, how are you going to give my kids housing and you can't give it to me? You know, so these are things, I just think the way some things are set up, I think it's designed a long time ago without thinking it through or having the people that it affect help you make these decisions, having the right people at the table, opposed to just having corporate people or the people who went to school who have these degrees and understand what's going on, what they think is going on, making a decision for the individuals who it affect when they realize in the end, it doesn't affect the decision makers at all. So, of course, we go back to these housing. That's the biggest thing that I'm a big advocate about, trying to make sure we have an affordable housing or just readily available housing for individuals who are seeking housing needs at this current time. Outside of that, I mean, of course, we want individuals to have these trainings to seek employment in order so that they can take care of themselves and their family. But, you know, it all goes back to housing. We have to do better. We have to continue striving. We have to continue knocking on these doors to get individuals or these organizations or just the federal government to provide adequate housing for individuals. And adequate housing doesn't have to be subsidized housing or what we consider projects. You know, that doesn't have to be adequate housing. You know, the thing about it is, like, you know, we try to tell individuals that people, places, and things, you know, about making correct changes. You know, how can you ask a man to recover and he's recovered or has a successful reentry and you put him back in a jungle where he fought to come recover to get from, you put him back over there and ask him to not succumb or give in to his environment again? That's almost impossible. No, that's like an oxymoron also on the topic itself. But outside of that, that's all I have to add to that piece right there.
So I'm looking at the comments. We're having some awesome, thank you, Demetrius. We're having some great conversations, it looks like, in the comments. So let's open this up. I'd love to hear from some of y'all, what your experiences have been with reentry and specifically around like trying to find housing, trying to find employment, and how we put those together. Don't everybody jump in at once.
What's up? I'm Philip Cooper. I'm in Asheville, North Carolina. And as far as like reentry employment, from my lens, you know, people going to work, you know, we have a demand. Actually, this is the best I ever seen it for people like us, people who have served time with backgrounds. I ain't never seen it as good for us as far as employment opportunities. People are having to modify their standards, you know what I'm saying, for hiring because, you know, they're struggling to find people to go to work. And so I love seeing that, you know what I'm saying, as far as the HR professionals reaching out. But like the reality of it here in Buncombe County, you did. People can come up here, and we got a lot of nonprofits that do good work as far as like mental health and substance use disorder and stuff like that. But bro, when people are get ready to transition out of the halfway house, it is hard to find an apartment because apartments won't rent to us. You know what I'm saying? I ran into that myself, you know, and I was released on March the 5th, 2011, and glory be to God that I never had to return to the penitentiary. But what I will say is in 2017, when me and my baby mama broke up and it was time for me to get my own place, I ran back into it. And at that time, I was, you know, I'm an evangelist. So I was in the churches, I was in the high schools mentoring, I was in the faith community, recovery community, but apartments did not want to hear that. You feel me? They have their criteria and they don't budge. Now there is a Mountain Housing Opportunities is under partnership property management, and they have a matrix that a guy named Jeff Holloman, he's in Greensboro, North Carolina. He shared that with me, and they have a pretty interesting gray area. Like you have a automatic pass, automatic exclusion, and then case by case. You dig? And so they have a pretty interesting case by case section. So I believe there is hope if we was to partner with partnership property management, which oversees like the income-based housing, not necessarily the quote unquote projects, but more like the income-based housing. And it's still kind of limited because you can't make but so much money and live in those properties. But it is a way that we can help people navigate and make the system work for them with something like that. If somebody wants to follow up with how we can engage partnership property management, you know what I'm saying? I'll put my email in the chat, but I did start a conversation with them. I have seen people with backgrounds move into apartment complexes that are under that partnership property management umbrella. So I know they ain't just talking. As far as the solutions that I see as far as reentry, I put in the chat defund probation. I was never the person that said defund the police because I can't even legally have a Glock 9. You dig what I'm saying? But I will say defund probation because I have people that get out of prison. They can't get a hold of their probation officer. I can help them find really good jobs. You dig? And the probation officers don't be following up. They don't want to let nobody know when somebody coming back to the area, and they get pinged, you know, early. You feel me? They know who's coming back to this area before they get here. And I believe that reentry does happen. I've seen in the chat before somebody is released, it should start before they get out, and it can happen. We need to get the Governor Cooper and whoever those people are to sit down and let's really talk about how this money is being spent. You know, I see how they can make money get spent on the substance use disorder, the opioids and stuff like that. So I know it is possible, but I do feel like we do need to reimagine how the funding is spent for case managers in the prison and how the funding is spent for the probation officers, you know, because we make their job easy. If a case manager, and I got evidence, if a case manager contacts me and says, hey, Philip, I have somebody that's coming back to your area in, let's say 2 months. And matter of fact, say 30 days, and they don't have anything. We can help with paying for a month of housing. We can help with paying for work boots. We can give them a ride to ENC Works, a boat rehab, or whatever the hell they want to go. It makes the case manager's job easy, but they choose to not follow up with people. They choose to not send the emails. Why? We need to follow up with the governor and them. You know, I know they got the statewide reentry council collaborative. People have brought these kind of issues up before, so maybe we need to go a different route. But, you know, I'm not just a complainer. There are solutions that can be implemented, but it does have to do with funding. Vote rehab, you know, I don't see our people getting to take advantage of the vote rehab the way that they can. They have funding that can support our people. And I feel like if the investment was made into those boots on the ground organizations, we could start bridging the gaps and identifying why the gaps wasn't bridged before. Sorry if I was talking too fast, but I get fired up about reentry, y'all, because I'm over the bull. You know what I'm saying? And I see, like, from the work that I do, the impact that can be had when you leverage lived experience and you put these people who are qualified by, you know, their lived experience, not just the degrees. You feel me? Some of us, we experts by experience, and I feel like more investment needs to be made there.
Thanks, man. That was awesome. Anybody else want to share?
I just wanted to speak to something that Philip Cooper just raised, that just as mentioned with the partnership property management, there also are properties that are funded under the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. They may be one of them that also uses this matrix for individuals who are applying for housing. And so that basically means that they can't do a full ban of a total ban of anyone just because they have a conviction. And I can share, I'll share that information in the chat for how you can look up properties in your local area. But just wanted to mention that statewide, North Carolina Housing Finance Agency has properties that are getting funded through them from federal funds, and to make sure that they, okay, thank you so much, to make sure that these properties are, if they are receiving those funds, the low income housing tax credits, that they are allowing folks to stay, or not doing a full ban of those who have convictions.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else want to share personal experience? Okay, well, let's go back to Daquan and Demetrius. I'd like to ask each of you, and Daquan, if you want to jump in first, is if you're thinking about the challenges to housing and employment, what's number one? What's the biggest challenge we have?
Definitely funding.
What'd you say, Portia?
I'm sorry. I was talking the whole time and for some reason could not get my phone to come off mute.
That's fine. No worries.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to add that I feel like, some of the most important things are, speaking with those legislators to get some type of legislative, laws in place where there isn't discrimination against people who have already served their time after conviction. As a former justice involved individual, that was one of the hurdles that I had transitioning back. I have a family that's very supportive, but after you make a horrible mistake, you kind of don't want to just go back and lean on your family to absorb more resources for them. You want to kind of be out on your own. So that's what I did. And some of those challenges with, finding a place where your credit's not right, or you don't have any work history to show that, you can actually pay for a place. So what I found that I needed to do was to connect with those who are private owners to discuss, I went through the criminal justice system, but that's not who I am today. And this is what I've accomplished. And thankfully for me, that was a successful tactic that I utilized to be able to secure housing in a safe environment where I felt comfortable to be able to thrive and get out here and do what I had to do in order to survive. And so I feel like, when we get to talking about all these major organizations who are receiving funding for reentry, who are not, boots on the ground technically, in the community, connecting with people who are former justice involved individuals transitioning out, it's a sad situation because we can allocate millions of dollars to all these big organizations, but it's not coming down the pipe where it's helping people who really need it. And then what happens after that, it becomes a strain on smaller organizations who are pretty much trying to squeeze water out of a turnip to be able to support people who are, getting out of incarceration. And I can speak to that, from experience. I actually have a nonprofit organization now. However, millions of dollars have been, sent to a organization out in my area where I serve. However, people are being sent over there for assistance, but they're being turned away as if they can't provide them with assistance. So they're still returning right back to my organization, which is a small organization that's not receiving those big budgets or those dollars to help people, to say, hey, what can you do now to support us? So I think it's important for us to begin to look at those organizations who have shown that they are here in the community and trying to do the best that they can to help people who are, getting out of incarceration, to successfully re-enter back into the community, because success is a big word and it has many components, and it requires other people to get on the bandwagon to say, hey, I see you, I support you, and I'm willing to do what I can to ensure that you don't go back into incarceration. What we got to do is we got to, we get to talking about reducing recidivism. How are we going to do that? It takes a team to do that. And if we're continuously looking at folks, after they serve their time, pay their restitution and all these things, then there should be no ifs, ands, or buts about whether you should provide them with housing or food. Those are the major necessities that people need in order to thrive and survive out here. And so I just feel like it's time for us to not only just talk about it and march about it, but we got to go there and demand the fact that this is something that we need. This housing ranks at the top when you get to talking about air. So I feel like it's important for us to, look at things a little bit different going into 2022.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, something I picked out of that though is talking about when you're looking for housing. In most cases, I mean, my experience, I applied to all kinds of places to try to get housing and got turned down time and time and time again. And it wasn't until I found a private landlord that was willing to rent to me that I was able to get a place. And it feels like, it feels like to me, the difference between kind of housing and employment, at least right now, is so many companies are desperate for people to work that they're not necessarily putting as much emphasis on background checks as they might have a couple of years ago. But
Right.
housing still seems to be the place. If you've got a criminal background, so many places just automatically shut you down. And even, Durham Community Land Trust, which I think of as generally a fairly progressive housing provider, screens for violent convictions in the past. And it doesn't matter, we've had guys 25 years past and they still won't let them move in. That's, come on, how long does your past follow you?
Right. Well, here in North Carolina, it seems like it follows you until you're pretty much in the graveyard, and still too. It depends on how much impact you had in your community. Because aside from what I do in the community, I work for one of the highest levels in government, but still to this day, there could be someone who thinks I don't belong there and want to bring up something that happened over 10 plus years ago. Ma'am, sir, I've already proven that what happened 10 plus years ago ain't got absolutely nothing to do with how I handle business today. So, I mean, I don't know. People just don't get it. Like, I don't know. And it bothers me. It really does.
Yeah, it's bothersome as well. I mean, committing a crime at 24 years old, 22 years old, and then here I am at 42 going on a job interview, and you want me to talk about what I did at 24? It's like, that's really irrelevant. I really think that at the time, we're talking about 20 years ago, of course, we did a lot of things at that age that everybody made mistakes. And I have to let people understand, remind individuals, like, the only difference between what we did and what you're doing is we got caught. You guys are breaking laws every day. If it's just something as simple as you're taking copy machine paper from home and taking it home for your kids to put in the printer, like you're stealing. So the things are like, I have to remind employees to, like, stop looking at the charge on paper and look at the individual. Get this individual opportunities to present themselves, to say what they can and can't do. The narrative gets old talking about what we did. This is what I did then. This is what I'm doing now. I had to tell a few employees, like, listen, that was so far behind me, I really don't even remember it. So the last thing I want to do is sit here and talk about it and elaborate on a conviction that happened over 20 years ago. This is who I am now. This is what I'm doing now. My mindset at 24 and 40 years old is not the same. It's totally different. So I just think just the ignorance and, people get offended by that word, which is just lack of knowledge of. I just think the overall ignorance of dealing with individuals who have barriers in the past, if that's not part of your realm of things that you're faced with, when you see it, you just totally shy away from it.
So you're talking about the conversation with employers about, look at what somebody can do today. How do you do that with housing providers?
I think it's solely different. I think it's about a discretion with housing, because it's easy for them to say that you're around other people. It's just a choice we're going to make, and we're just not going to bend. Just like Daquan said, we're just not going to bend. You know, these are rules that I said. This is what we're going to stand by, and it's just not, because at the end of the day, the house or the apartment is going to be rented, and you have choices. Do I let somebody who have a criminal history stay here, or I let somebody who doesn't have a criminal history, who has a job and has even though my credit score might not be as good, but we're just going to let them move opposed to the individual who has a criminal history. So I just think it's about choices. I don't know. How do we make those changes? It starts with legislators. It starts with Congress. It has to be mandated. I don't think we can do all the talking. We can do all the marching we want to, but like that's not going to push the pin. It starts with the higher ups. I think they have to make the call and make the decision. I mean, we can keep beating on the door. We can keep talking about the same narrative, but until they start pushing the pin to understand, I don't know. The only way I know that you can make effective change when it comes to money, if you start digging in some other pockets. If you get other people to say, hey, we're not doing it because you won't open up for these other people, we're not going to do it, then they'll start bending.
Daquan, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, and just to piggyback off what the brother was just saying, man, it's sad because when you go to talk about the legislators and the local officials and all of these people, most of them are in the real estate. You know what I mean? Most of them are in the real estate. If they're not they're in development, they're into the construction of it. If they don't do it, then they friends into it, they partners, they circle, all of these things. So it gets to the point where as if when you're having these conversations, you got to have the conversations about them as well as individuals, having the capacity to be able to give somebody somewhere to live if and when they complete their sentence, or even if they're still on probation or parole. It don't matter. You know, those are the ones, like he said, we have to go to. Those are the ones we have to make demands to, and stop going in there asking and letting them control the narrative on why we shouldn't have what we know we're supposed to have, and stop being scared to offend people and mess up working relationships because this person, nah, it ain't about that. It's about giving us, our just due. Dealing in equality with us. It goes back to that, seeing us as humans, seeing us as who we really are, not what's on a piece of paper, man. That's just, it don't get no plainer than that. It just don't get no plainer than that, man. It's just in these people's hearts. It's just in their heart to do what they do. And you can show the data, you can show the statistics, you can show how not giving us proper housing and employment contributes to the unemployment rate and the homelessness rate. All of these things factor in. But it still goes back to the one key factor that it was designed to be this way. Until we break that system, until we destroy that, then we're going to continue to be where we are, having these same conversations.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. I mean, people talk about the system is broken. No, it's not. It does exactly what it's intended to do.
Right, and so that's why we need to raise up people who can run and be in these positions and give some of these folks a run for their money, because it's the only way we're going to affect any type of changes if we're sitting in those seats, because we already know how and what should be changed. But it seems like you're beating on deaf ears with folks who have been in office for over 50, 20 plus years, like they made it a career. They say, yeah, when they come to those rallies, yeah, this is what I want to do. But when you get elected and get back into the position, it's a whole completely different thing. So I think it's about holding people accountable and also creating the spaces where people that are running in these organizations who are all about reentry and all about helping people who are transitioning out and fixing, the judicial system, because it does need fixing. I was actually watching Representative Marcy Ray, who's a judge in the legislature right now. I mean, she sat on a panel at the Cato Institute and actually acknowledged the fact that the system is broken. However, there just hasn't been any legislators that have the time to actually fix the system. So if you get someone like that who can be honest and sit out there and let folks know that this is what we need, but we don't have the time, then I think it's time for us to make a way for those who do have the time and care about these issues to be in as elected officials.
I'm sorry, Portia, who was that you said didn't have the time?
I said Representative Marcy Ray. She's a former judge out of Durham County, but she's now in the legislature. But in 2018, she sat on a panel at the Cato Institute, was putting on, and they were talking about a host of different issues. And it just never left my mind that she acknowledged, as a former judge and now as a legislator, that the system is broken. However, it's just not enough time in legislative time to be able to fix those issues or have representatives who are working specifically on those issues. And so they just never left my mind, because for someone who's an elected official to acknowledge there's a brokenness and there's not enough time to fix it, then that's when we need to be elected officials who can make the time to make that's the specific issue that they're going to be working on as they're elected into those offices.
Yeah, I get you, but that's something. I mean, I feel you on that. It's just they had enough time to create it. They had enough time to sit down and come up and construct it and continue to have a perpetual mindset of lock them up and throw away the key, to hell with them. They ain't human. They ain't this, they ain't that. They got time to continue to do what they're doing. I feel like they got time to continue to try to undo it. And not saying that she's not. I'm not saying that she's not. I sat in the federal system for 12 and a half years and watched as senators and representatives and Democrats and Republicans and liberals and conservatives and all of these different titles say the 100-to-1 crack cocaine ratio was a racially disparate law, sentencing, and all of the above. It tore the Black community up. This law did this. For 12 and a half years, I sat there and watched them say this. Admit to it. And prior to me even going into the federal system, they were saying it, So it don't surprise me to hear them say, yeah, this ain't right, this ain't that, it's not right. It don't surprise me, because what are they gonna do?
Philip, did you want to, I see a hand up. Did you want to jump in?
Yeah, right on. So what I was wanted to mention two things. So like the certificates of relief, I don't know if we can ramp that up and make some adjustments to that, even, because it definitely excludes a lot of people, but if there was some type of past or character reference that held some weight with the landlords or whatnot, because like on the employment side, like I say, it's gravy now. It's more gravy than I ever seen it. You dig? But when we talk about housing, like that really hasn't been tackled. I think it would definitely start with apartments. So the first thing was like, what can we do with the certificates of relief, and can we make some modifications to it to include more people? So boom, that's one thing. The other thing is really having a focal area like with the apartments, because the apartments are going to be the place where people like us are going to want to live at. So like, how can we ramp up the engaging those with the apartment complexes? Because once you get past the apartment and get your rental history and all of the other stuff up, hell, you can start working on, financial literacy and all the things, you feel me? Then, buying your own house, they can't stop that. I'm a homeowner now, first time homeowner, glory be to God, you feel me? But it took some credit karma and it took some mentorship coming from other people to help me understand and implement financial literacy into my recovery. But for real, like the starting point, what I'm hearing is going to be at the apartment complexes. So we got a spot that we need to engage, who governs the apartment complexes? I know up here in Western North Carolina, we have something called the Western North Carolina Apartment Association. And like they have a certain set of rules. They have black and white, they have gray areas. Like a lot of these places outside of partnership property management, they also have criteria. And I don't know who governs those. I know a person like me wouldn't be able to be the person that could lead the conversation initially. It would definitely take some educated lawyer allies and stuff like that. But you know, that's why I see what that needs the most attention are those apartment complexes. Because once we get an apartment, we get some rental history, we work on our credit. They can't stop us from buying a house.
Yeah, thanks. Sierra, did you want to jump in?
Yeah. So I'm currently working with Vera Institute. A lot of stuff can be done on a county level, like your county commission and the city council can do a lot of things. So we're going to be working in Guilford County. They've already changed some stuff in Alamance County. So we can start at a county level, really, and then go up to legislators.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, one of the things I struggle with when we talk about changing the legislature is the way the state is gerrymandered. You know, we would have to change that, I think, before we'd have a real chance at the legislature.
But what do you mean about gerrymandered, Philip? Because for one thing, reentry is not just a Democrat issue or Republican issue. I feel like it's an all-around issue because now you're seeing more people that are not just black and brown people that are, you know, being incarcerated. So I feel like I feel like this is not like a party issue. I feel like this is an overall issue because for one thing, when people get incarcerated, it's going to affect everybody in the community, especially when they come home. Because what if they can't find food or housing? The shelter isn't allowing them to come in. First thing they're going to think about doing is committing a crime so they can go back to jail. When they commit a crime, they're not checking to see if the person is Republican, Democrat, Independent, or anything like that. They're looking at the fact that I got to do this tonight because I don't have food at home. I got to provide for the kids. I got to get some formula. And so that's why I feel like it's just not a Republican or a Democrat issue. It's just an all around issue that I feel like everybody need to be working on, just not the Democrats, you know? Because if you not, it shouldn't matter who has the majority inside of the legislature in order for there to be some type of assistance on this. Like, where are the lobbyists at? You know, that we need lobbyists who are actually working on this 24/7 because this is a 24/7 issue.
Okay, so we have some kind of longer term goals about working in the legislature, trying to change the way the state addresses reentry and housing and employment. But let's just talk about housing for a minute. What are some short-term strategies? What's stuff we can do today to try to give people better housing outcomes?
You can start with the local, like your city council and county commission, because they can change some things from what I've heard and been told. They've actually changed the background, the way they do backgrounds and Alamance. So they no longer, look at your background and deny you. What they do now is they let you go through an appeal process and they'll get more information to gather about what happened, how long the crime was. They're also working with another nonprofit that helps graduate people back into public housing because we have a lot of people who have families that are in public housing. And of course, you can't be in public housing with a felony. So they have a nonprofit that works with them to help them graduate back into the home so they're able to be with their families. So it's things that could be done on a local level before you get to the state.
So that's kind of interesting. You're talking about that they were adjusting the way they do background checks.
Yeah,
who's they?
So I have to get the name of the nonprofit. Vera works with, it's a nonprofit called Vera Institute, and they've been working with another nonprofit. I think it's called Deep Thoughts or Deep Roots, but let me get the information and then I can send it out to everybody.
Yeah, I'd really be interested in kind of following up with that to see what they're doing.
Okay.
What other suggestions would people have? Daquan, Demetrius, anybody wants to jump in?
I mean, what about building a coalition of, property owners who will say, hey, I'm all about, accepting applications for, former justice involved individuals who are nonviolent offenders.
I know. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. You can go ahead.
Charges, man. A lot of folks have one event and they affects them all the day. And like, if I try to stay away from saying, the nonviolent kind, because it does exclude a lot of people that go into prison and transform their life. I'm living proof of that. You dig? I was on drugs. I hurt somebody when I was high as hell, and I don't even think like that unless I'm turned all the way up. You feel me? And so if we was to link to just say nonviolent, it would exclude a lot of people.
Daquan, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I agree with what he just said 100% totally, 100% totally. But I was going to say what Sierra has said, was said about on a local level, get things started on a local level, because they did the same thing here with Ban the Box and Wilmington on certain contracts and employment. I feel that should be done there as well. Also, with the paying to get into somewhere, like the application fees, stop people from being able to charge you, knowing that they're going to be able to, knowing they're going to deny you in the beginning. Now you out of $125, $100 or whatever the case may be, knowing that, they was going to do what they was going to do. So I would say that too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We had a program here in Durham several years back where the shelter was working with a particular landlord that they had identified, who was willing to work with people coming out of the shelter. So many of them criminally justice involved, many of them with bad credit, and rent to them. But what this landlord wanted was for someone from the shelter to be involved really in kind of a case management for the first year or so that person was renting. Do we, just kind of speaking, are y'all in a position where if that was an offer, we could take that up?
I say from my end, definitely, because I ain't finna vouch for nobody unless I got rapport with them anyway. And so we definitely make that promise. And see, here in Asheville too, like the local reentry council, they have what is it called, an MOA or MOU with housing authority. You dig? So like, if somebody is vouched for by the LRC, then they'll approve them. So I'm 100% behind that model. And I seen in the chat somebody mentioned the ARPA funds. So we definitely need to make sure we got funding, because what we don't need to do is have somebody have a ton of people on their caseload to where they're not providing the proper mentorship. You dig? And then that could make us all look bad. So they definitely need to be putting some money where their mouth is. I mentioned community health workers and peer support specialists. Those are both trending and evidence-based, and all of us with lived experience qualify for one of the two or both. So I'm definitely behind that, my brother. And I would like to undergird it with the evidence-based credentials, just so they know we ain't playing.
There we go. If I could use my mouse to click, I'd be in good shape. Yeah, no, that's cool. And Diana, the idea about a coalition to purchase property, yeah, I think that's brilliant. Is maybe something we need to talk about, is whether it's ARP money or just trying to pull together local money, is buy our own properties to rent. Okay, Keisha, I'm not sure on time here because I thought I said something about an hour. So how are we running on time?
So it is almost 4:30. I know there's some folks who may need to hop off at 4:30. If there's some points that y'all want to add, that's great, just because we are recording and we're hoping to be able to share insight. So if folks want to add stuff, and if people are willing to hang on for a little while, if there are any additional comments, that sounds great.
Okay, so as we're coming kind of the the end of the hour, does anybody have something they want to absolutely get in? Well, Demetrius,
Just
would
the
you
fact
like
that
to?
y'all are doing a great job, and I feel like we need more leaders like yourself and Justice Center who are all about this, and getting behind people who are trying to do the right thing, and help people do the right thing as well. Something about peer support specialists. I mean, was he saying like organizations make sure helping to ensure that people get peer support, those credentials to be able to serve those populations?
Yeah. No, I think along with housing, one of the things we ought to be using ARP money for is to boost the number of peer support specialists and the number of jobs for peer support specialists.
This is Diana. I just want to add that we should definitely stay on our elected officials and holding them accountable. But when we start holding them accountable, they can't turn around and blackball us from the grants that we apply for. We're seeing a lot of that in Wake County. These same big organizations, like Portia was saying, there's the one that's still getting the money, but they are not affected. They don't have the boots on the ground. We can make the referrals to these organizations and these programs, but they'll come back and say they cannot help them. And so that's why we got to continue to hold these elected officials accountable, but don't allow them to blackball us when we hold them accountable.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Dan. Demetrius, you want to kind of close us out here?
I sure definitely would. One, I wanted to thank Keisha, Laura, Tim, Drew, everyone who participated. I think this is a start, these conversations. But again, these conversations that we're having them on the ground, but these are conversations that they need to be had at a 30,000 foot level. We need to have these conversations with the higher ups. I mean, we can do because we do all the work, we do all the groundwork, but we got to put feet to the fire. We got to hold them accountable. And like Ms. Donna just said, I think that was her. I mean, we have to be more vigilant about not allowing individuals or organization programs to use us to get what they need for their own willful gain and then go somewhere else with the information. So, it's almost sad, but we have to be mindful, and, we have to guard this as almost like sacred when we're speaking to some individuals about certain things, because people will pick your mind and they will come to your meetings, they will pick you for information and take what you're doing and do something else with it and run in the opposite direction. So at the end of the day, we have to make sure that we're doing this for the people that we serve, and the people we serve are our community, because we're in contact with these people every day. You're on mute, Drew.
Yeah, technology is great. Thank you, Demetrius. So we'll kind of officially cap it there. But if there's somebody that has something they wanted to say and maybe didn't want to say in front of everybody else, hang on and you can have that opportunity. But otherwise, guys, thank you all so much. Appreciate it. And hope to see you over the next few days with the other sessions that are being done.
Thank you. Y'all have a blessed day.
Have a good one.
Thank you.